Captain Zixithera of the Hegemony research vessel. Endless inquiry jolted awake as emergency alarms shrieked through the corridors. Her forearms moved with practiced efficiency, pulling on her command uniform while her secondary brain processed, the flood of data streaming across her neural implant. "What's the situation?" she barked into her communicator, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had commanded starships for over 2 centuries. "Captain, we have a Code 7 breach in Laboratory Section Delta," came the panicked voice of her science officer, Dr. Kelvak. "The human subject has... Captain, you need to see this yourself." Zixithera's blood ran cold. A Code 7 meant loss of containment, and they only had one human subject aboard. The corridor lights flickered ominously as she raced toward the science deck, her magnetic boots clanging against the metal flooring. The endless inquiry had been humanity's first official contact with alien civilization, a moment that was supposed to herald a new age of peaceful cooperation between species. Instead, it had become something else entirely. 3 days ago, the human vessel, Prometheus, had responded to their diplomatic beacon. The meeting had gone smoothly at first. The humans seemed remarkably similar to the Hegemony's own species, bipedal, curious, and surprisingly adaptable. Captain Sarah Chen of the Prometheus had been professional, even friendly. But then the Hegemony's xenobiologists had made their discovery. Humans were biologically impossible. According to every model in the Hegemony's vast databases, a species like humanity should have died out millions of years ago. Their homeworld was a death trap. Extreme weather, deadly pathogens, massive predators, and atmospheric conditions that would kill most civilized species within hours. Yet somehow these fragile-looking creatures had not only survived, but thrived. The High Command had been very clear about their orders: obtain samples, run tests, determine the source of human resilience. The future of the Hegemony might depend on it. They had taken Dr. Marcus Webb, the Prometheus chief medical officer, under the pretense of a routine cultural exchange. The man had been eager to learn about alien medicine, completely unaware that he was about to become the subject of the most important biological study in galactic history. Now, as Zixithera rounded the corner toward the laboratory section, she could hear the screaming getting louder. But it wasn't coming from the human. The laboratory door had been torn clean off its hinges. "By the 7 moons," she whispered, staring at the twisted metal that lay scattered across the corridor floor. The reinforced titanium-carbon composite door had been rated to withstand a direct hit from a plasma cannon. Dr. Kelvak appeared beside her, his usually pristine white coat stained with something that looked suspiciously like blood. His 3 eyes were wide with terror. "Captain, we need to evacuate the ship," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The human isn't human anymore." "Explain," Zixithera commanded, though part of her wasn't sure she wanted to hear the answer. "We administered the standard toxin battery," Kelvak began, his words tumbling over each other in his haste. "Neuroparalytic agents, cellular disruptors, genetic scramblers, everything we use to study alien biology. The human should have been unconscious within minutes, dead within hours. And, Captain, the toxins didn't kill him, they changed him." A sound echoed from within the ruined laboratory, something between a roar and a laugh, but utterly, terrifyingly human. "Dr. Webb?" Zixithera called out, her hand moving instinctively to her sidearm. "Can you hear me?" The sound stopped abruptly. Then from the darkness beyond the doorway came a voice that was definitely human, but somehow more. "I can hear everything, Captain. I can hear your heartbeat. I can smell your fear. I can taste the metal in your blood through the air recycling system." Zixithera's forehands began to tremble. In all her years of command, she had never heard anything so completely, utterly wrong. "What did you do to him?" she hissed at Kelvak. "We don't know," the scientist replied, his voice cracking. "The toxins should have broken down his cellular structure, but instead they seem to have enhanced it. His muscle density has increased by 400%. His reflexes are operating at superhuman levels. His brain activity is off the charts." A figure stepped out of the shadows, It was still recognizably Dr. Marcus Webb. The same brown hair, the same kind eyes, the same gentle smile that had charmed the entire diplomatic party. But now there was something else lurking behind those eyes, something that made every evolutionary instinct in Zixthara's body scream at her to run. "Hello, Captain," Dr. Webb said pleasantly, as if they were meeting for afternoon tea. "I think we need to talk." That was when Zixthara noticed the bodies. 3 of her security officers lay crumpled against the far wall, their exoskeletons cracked like eggshells. They were still breathing, but barely. "You killed my people," she whispered. "No," Dr. Webb replied, his voice carrying an odd note of regret. "I was very careful not to kill anyone, though I'll admit it took some getting used to. These new reflexes are quite remarkable." He flexed his hand, and Zixthara watched in horror as his fingers elongated slightly, the nails hardening into what looked like claws. "Your toxins," he continued conversationally, "were designed to attack what you consider fundamental biological weaknesses. But here's the thing about humans, Captain. We don't have fundamental biological weaknesses. We have adaptive advantages." Kelvak stepped forward, his scientific curiosity apparently overriding his sense of self-preservation. "That's impossible. Every species has biological limitations." Dr. Webb smiled, and for a moment he looked exactly like the friendly, curious doctor they had welcomed aboard. Then the smile widened, revealing teeth that were definitely sharper than they had been 3 days ago. "Doctor," he said, "you clearly don't understand what evolution means on a planet like Earth." Chapter 2. The Evolutionary Truth, the Emergency. Lighting cast eerie shadows across the laboratory as Dr. Webb began to pace, his movements fluid and predatory in a way that made Zixthara's skin crawl. Every few steps he would pause to examine some piece of equipment, his enhanced senses apparently cataloging everything in the room. "You want to know what your toxins did to me?" he asked, picking up a twisted piece of metal that had once been a restraining device. He crumpled it between his fingers like paper. "They activated something that's been sleeping in human DNA for millions of years." "That's scientifically impossible," Kelvak protested, though his voice lacked conviction. "No species maintains dormant evolutionary traits for that long." Dr. Webb laughed, a sound that was somehow both human and utterly alien. "Doctor, let me tell you about a little place called Earth." He moved to the laboratory's main display screen, which had somehow survived the chaos. With movements almost too fast to follow, he began calling up data from the ship's database on human biology. "Earth," he said, gesturing to the display, "is what you might call a survival course planet. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, predators that could swallow your entire species whole. Most civilizations would have given up and found a nice, stable world to colonize." The display showed images of Earth's history: massive dinosaurs, saber-toothed cats, volcanic eruptions that blotted out the sun. "But humans didn't leave," Webb continued. "We adapted, we survived, we thrived, and every single challenge that should have killed us instead made us stronger." Zixthara found herself drawn into the explanation despite her fear. As a military officer, she understood the concept of adaptation under pressure, but what Webb was describing sounded like something out of mythology. "Your toxins," Webb said, his voice taking on a lecturing tone that reminded her eerily of his original personality, "were designed to target what you see as biological weaknesses: cellular regeneration, immune response, neurological function. But in humans, these aren't weaknesses, they're emergency protocols." He turned to face them directly, and Zixthara saw that his eyes had changed. They were still human, but there was a depth to them now, as if he was seeing layers of reality that hadn't been visible before. "When you poisoned me," he said simply, "you triggered every survival mechanism that humanity has developed over millions of years of evolution." All at once, Kelvak was frantically taking notes on his personal device. "The cellular enhancement? We observed. You're saying it's a natural human ability?" "Not natural," Webb corrected. "Emergency. Humans are designed to survive. When we encounter a threat our bodies can't handle through normal means, we adapt. Quickly, he held up his hand, and they watched in fascination and horror as his fingernails extended into claws, then retracted back to normal. Enhanced reflexes, increased strength, improved senses, accelerated healing. These are all things the human body can do when it needs to. Your toxins convinced my body that it needed to. The ship's intercom crackled to life. Captain Zixthera to the bridge immediately. We have incoming vessels. Zixthera's heart sank. She activated her communicator with one hand while keeping her weapon trained on Webb with another. Bridge, this is the captain. Report. Captain, we have 5 human vessels approaching. She at high speed. They're broadcasting a message demanding the immediate return of Dr. Webb. Webb's expression shifted, becoming suddenly serious. Captain Chen, he said quietly. She's coming for me. Your fellow humans don't know what you've become, Zixthera said, suddenly seeing a possible advantage. But Webb shook his head. Captain, you still don't understand. This isn't unusual for humans. This is what we do. The laboratory's communication system activated, and Captain Chen's voice filled the room. Dr. Webb, if you can hear this, we're coming to get you. Hold tight. Sarah, Webb called out, his voice carrying easily to the communications pickup. I'm fine, but we have a problem. Marcus? Thank God. Are you hurt? Webb looked at Zixthera with an expression that might have been pity. No, Sarah, I'm not hurt. But I think our new friends here don't understand what they've gotten themselves into. There was a pause from the other end of the communication. When Chen's voice came back, it was cold and professional. Captain Zixthera, this is Captain Chen of the Earth Defense Force. You have 30 minutes to return Dr. Webb safely to his ship. After that, we will consider this an act of war. Zixthera activated her communicator. Captain Chen, I need you to understand your officer has been changed. He may be dangerous. Another pause. Then Chen's voice returned, and this time there was something in it that made even Webb look concerned. Captain, with all due respect, you have no idea what dangerous means when it comes to humans. Return our people, and we can continue our diplomatic mission. Keep him, and you'll learn why Earth has never been successfully invaded. The communication cut off, leaving the laboratory in silence. Webb looked at Zixthera with what might have been sympathy. Captain, I need you to understand something. What's happened to me? This isn't a mutation or an aberration. This is what humans become when we're threatened. He gestured toward the display, which was now showing images of human military conflicts throughout history. We've been at war with our own planet for millions of years. We've survived ice ages, plagues, predators, and disasters that would have ended most civilizations. And every time we've been pushed to the brink of extinction, we've come back stronger. Kelvaka was staring at the display in horror. These casualty numbers, these can't be accurate. Oh, they're accurate, Webb said calmly. World War II alone killed over 70 million humans. And you know what we did afterward? We rebuilt. We went to space. We created art and music and literature. We didn't just survive, we thrived. He walked closer to Zixthera, moving with that same predatory grace. Captain, your species has had peace for what, 1,000 years? You've solved war, poverty, disease. You've created a perfect, stable civilization. Yes, she said, not understanding where this was leading. And that, Webb said quietly, is why you're about to lose a war you don't even know you're fighting. The ship shuddered suddenly as if struck by a massive impact. Captain, came the panicked voice of her bridge officer. The human vessels are firing on us. Our shields are down to 60%. Webb sighed. I tried to warn you, Captain. Humans don't negotiate from a position of weakness, and right now you're holding one of ours. Another impact shook the ship. This one strong enough to throw Kelvak against the wall. This is impossible, Zixthera said, her voice barely above a whisper. Your ships are tiny compared to ours. Your technology is primitive. Webb smiled, and for the first time since his transformation, the expression looked genuinely human. Captain, he said. Let me tell you something about human technology. We didn't build our ships to explore the galaxy. We built them to survive. A war with our own species. Every human vessel is designed to take damage and keep fighting. The ship shuddered again and the lights flickered. Besides, Webb added casually, who said anything about primitive technology? Chapter 3. The War Nobody Saw Coming. The bridge of the Endless Inquiry was in chaos when Zixathara arrived, with Dr. Webb walking calmly beside her. Her crew was rushing between stations, damage reports flooding in from all sections of the Yao ship. Status report, she barked as she took her position in the command chair. Captain, we're taking concentrated fire from all 5 human vessels, her tactical officer reported, his voice strained. Our shields are down to 30% and falling. Their weapons are... Captain, they're using projectile weapons. Zixathara blinked in confusion. Projectile weapons? Against shields? Yes, Captain, but... The tactical officer paused, checking his readings again. They're not being stopped by our shields. The projectiles are moving too fast and hitting too hard. Our defensive systems weren't designed for this type of attack. Dr. Webb walked to the main view screen, which showed the 5 human ships in attack formation. They were indeed tiny compared to the Endless Inquiry, but they moved with a deadly precision that spoke of centuries of combat experience. Railguns, Webb said matter-of-factly. Magnetically accelerated tungsten rods moving at a significant fraction of the speed of light. We developed them for fighting each other, but they work just as well against alien shields. That's impossible, the tactical officer protested. The energy requirements alone would require a fusion reactor, Webb finished. Which every human ship has. We learned a long time ago that if you're going to fight a war, you need to bring enough power to win it. Another barrage of impacts shook the ship, and Zixathara heard the distant sound of hull breaches being sealed by emergency systems. Captain Chen is hailing us, the communications officer reported. On screen, Zixathara ordered. The view screen shifted to show the bridge of the human vessel, Prometheus. Captain Chen stood at the center of the screen, her expression calm but her eyes hard as steel. Captain Zixathara, Chen said without preamble, you have 15 minutes to return Dr. Webb and withdraw from this system. After that, we will board your vessel and take him back by force. Captain Chen, Zixathara replied, trying to keep her voice steady. I need you to understand that Dr. Webb has been altered. He may be dangerous to your crew. Chen's expression didn't change. Dr. Webb, are you there? I'm here, Sarah, Webb said, stepping into view of the screen. And I'm fine. Better than fine, actually. Chen looked him up and down, taking in the subtle changes in his appearance, the slightly elongated fingers, the enhanced musculature, the predatory way he moved. Adaptive enhancement? She asked calmly. Full spectrum, Webb replied. Triggered by xenobiological toxins. It's quite remarkable, actually. How long do you need to stabilize? Webb considered for a moment. Another hour, maybe 2. The cellular restructuring is still ongoing. Chen nodded as if this was the most normal conversation in the galaxy. Copy that. We'll extract you in 30 minutes. Zixathara stared at the screen in disbelief. You're not concerned that your officer has been transformed into something inhuman? For the first time, Chen smiled, and the expression was terrifying in its casualness. Captain, let me explain something about humans that your species seems to have missed. We're not explorers who learned to fight. We're warriors who learned to explore. She gestured to something off-screen, and the image shifted to show the Prometheus's cargo bay. Zixathara's blood ran cold at what she saw. The bay was filled with soldiers, hundreds of them, all wearing combat armor that looked like it had been designed to fight in the deepest circles of hell. They moved with the same predatory grace as the transformed Dr. Webb, checking weapons that seemed to incorporate technology decades ahead of what the hegemony had thought possible. Every human ship carries a full complement of Marines, Chen continued. We've been preparing for hostile first contact since before we left our solar system. Did you really think we'd come to the galaxy unprepared? This is impossible, Zixathara whispered. Your species just achieved faster-than-light travel. You should be centuries behind us technologically." Webb laughed, and the sound carried clearly across the bridge. "Captain, humans have been fighting wars for our entire history. When we finally got to space, we didn't stop fighting. We just found new places to do it." The ship shuddered again, and this time Zixithara heard the sound of metal tearing. "Hull breach on Deck 7, her damage control officer reported. "Emergency bulkheads are holding, but barely." "Captain," Chen said, her voice taking on a harder edge, "I'm going to give you one last chance. Return Dr. Webb, and we'll consider this a diplomatic misunderstanding. Keep him and we'll show you what humans do to people who threaten our own." "And if I refuse?" Chen's smile widened, showing teeth that looked remarkably similar to Webb's transformed ones. "Then you'll discover why Earth has never been successfully invaded, despite having a biosphere that every other species in the galaxy considers a death world." The communication cut off, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Dr. Webb walked over to Zixithara's command chair, moving with that same fluid grace that had become his trademark since the transformation. "Captain," he said quietly, "I need you to understand something. What's happened to me isn't unique. Every human has the potential for this kind of adaptation. It's how we survived on Earth." He gestured toward the view screen, which was now showing the approaching human ships in tactical formation. "Those Marines you saw? They've all been through enhancement protocols. Not as extreme as what your toxins triggered in me, but enough to make them effective against any threat they might encounter." Zixithara looked at him in horror. "Your entire species is designed for war," Webb finished. "Not because we're violent by nature, but because our planet taught us that peace is something you have to fight for." The ship shuddered again, and this time the lights went out completely, leaving them in the red glow of emergency illumination. "Captain," her tactical officer called out, "they've targeted our engines. We're dead in space." "Time to extraction?" Webb asked calmly. 20 minutes, came the reply from the communication station. Webb nodded and turned back to Zixithara. "Captain, I'm going to give you the same choice Captain Chen offered. Let me go, and this ends here. Keep me, and you'll learn why humans call their homeworld Earth, because that's where we bury our enemies." In the distance, Zixithara could hear the sound of docking clamps engaging. The humans were already boarding her ship, and somewhere in the back of her mind, she realized that this wasn't first contact gone wrong. This was humanity's first lesson to the galaxy about what happens when you threaten their own. Chapter 4. The Price of Understanding. The sound of cutting torches echoed through the corridors, of the endless inquiry as human Marines worked their way through the ship's defensive barriers. Zixithara had ordered her security forces to stand down. She wasn't about to start a shooting war with a species that seemed to have been preparing for galactic conflict since before they'd achieved spaceflight. Dr. Webb stood at the center of the bridge, perfectly calm despite the chaos around him. His transformation was still ongoing. Zixithara could see the subtle changes in his posture, the way his eyes tracked movement with predatory precision, the slight elongation of his limbs that spoke of enhanced reflexes and strength. "How long have you known?" she asked quietly. "Known what?" Webb replied, though his tone suggested he knew exactly what she was asking. That this would happen, that humans were this. Webb considered the question for a moment, tilting his head, in a gesture that was still recognizably human but somehow more focused than before. "We've always known we were different," he said finally. "Every species we've encountered in our own solar system, the few microorganisms, the extremophiles living in conditions that would kill most complex life, they all follow predictable biological patterns. But humans? We're the exception to every rule." The cutting sounds grew closer, and Zixithara could hear the distinctive sound of human voices calling out tactical positions. "Our literature is full of stories about humans encountering alien species," Webb continued. "And in almost every one, we're the underdogs, the primitive species that somehow manages to overcome superior technology through determination and adaptability." He gestured toward the view screen, which was now showing the human fleet in defensive formation around the disabled hegemony vessel. But the truth is, Captain, we've never been the underdogs. We've been the apex predators of our own planet for hundreds of thousands of years. We just didn't realize what that meant until we met you. The bridge doors suddenly burst open, and a squad of human Marines entered with weapons drawn. They moved, with the same predatory grace as Webb, their armor seeming to absorb the light rather than reflect it. "Dr. Webb," the lead Marine called out. "Are you injured?" "Negative, Sergeant," Webb replied, his voice carrying a new authority that made Zixathera's security instincts scream warnings. "But I'm undergoing adaptive enhancement. I'll need medical monitoring for the next few hours." "Copy that, sir, Captain." "Chen wants to see you immediately." Webb nodded and turned to Zixathera. "Captain, it's been educational, but I think it's time for me to rejoin my people." "Wait," she said, desperation creeping into her voice. "What happens now? Are we at war?" Webb paused at the doorway, flanked by the Marines. For a moment his expression softened, and she caught a glimpse of the gentle doctor who had boarded her ship 3 days ago. "That," he said quietly, "depends entirely on what you do next." An hour later, Zixathera found herself in the communications center of her ship, preparing to send the most important message of her career. The human fleet was still holding position around the endless inquiry, but they had stopped firing. That was something, at least. Dr. Kelvak stood beside her, his scientific notes scattered across the communication console. The data they had gathered about human biology was revolutionary and terrifying. "Are you sure about this?" he asked nervously. Zixathera activated the long-range communications array, preparing to send her report directly to the Hegemony High Command. "Doctor," she said, "we've just encountered a species that treats biological warfare as a form of enhancement therapy. A species that considers their homeworld, a planet that would kill most civilized beings within hours, to be a garden world, suitable for raising children." She gestured toward the tactical display, which showed the human ships maintaining their defensive positions with military precision. "We've encountered a species that has been preparing for galactic warfare since before they achieved faster-than-light travel, a species that considers peace to be something you have to fight for." The communication system indicated that the link to High Command was established. "This is Captain Zixathera of the Endless Inquiry," she began, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was about to report. "I am transmitting a priority alert regarding first contact with the species known as humans." She paused, looking at the data that would change everything the Hegemony thought they knew about the galaxy. "High Command, we have encountered a species that cannot be conquered, cannot be intimidated, and cannot be controlled through conventional means. They are not a civilization that learned to fight. They are warriors who learned to build a civilization." "The cow?" Response from High Command was immediate. "Explain." Zixathera took a deep breath. "Sir, humans have spent millions of years evolving on a planet that functions as a natural military academy. They have survived ice ages, extinction events, and predators that would terrify our worst nightmares. And they didn't just survive, they thrived." She uploaded the biological data that Kelvak had gathered. Their bodies are designed to adapt to threats in real time. Their psychology is optimized for group survival under extreme stress. Their technology is built around the assumption that they will always be fighting someone. Another pause, then. "Recommendations." Zixathera looked out at the human fleet, knowing that each of those small ships carried enough firepower to level a city and enough trained soldiers to conquer a planet. "Immediate diplomatic contact," she said firmly. "Full peaceful engagement protocols, whatever they want, give it to them. Whatever they need, provide it. And whatever you do, don't threaten them." Why? She thought about Dr. Webb, about the casual way he had discussed human military capabilities, about the predatory grace with which he moved after his transformation. "Because, sir," she said quietly, "I don't think we can survive a war with humanity. I'm not sure anyone can." The communication ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Dr. Kelvak was staring at his notes, his 3 eyes wide with a mixture of fascination and terror. "Captain," he said slowly, "do you think they know? Do the humans realize what they are?" Zixathera thought about Webb's transformation, about the way he had adapted to the toxins that should have killed him, about the casual competence with which the human Marines had boarded her ship. "Doctor," she said, "I think they're about to find out." Epilogue: The New Reality. 6 months later. The Hegemony Council chamber had never seen anything like it. Representatives from over 1,000 civilizations packed the ancient amphitheater, all of them talking at once about the same topic: humanity. Zixthara stood at the speaker's podium, her uniform decorated with new honors she had never wanted to earn. Behind her, a massive display showed the current state of human expansion throughout the galaxy. In 6 months, humanity had established diplomatic relations with over 50 species, mutual defense pacts with 30 more, and trade agreements that were reshaping the galactic economy. They had also, she noted with grim satisfaction, completely avoided any major conflicts, not because they were peaceful, because everyone was afraid to fight them. "The human expansion continues to exceed all projections," she reported to the assembled representatives. "They have established 17 new colonies, all on worlds that were previously considered uninhabitable by civilized standards." A representative from the Crystalline Collective raised a shimmering appendage. "Captain, what is the status of the human known as Dr. Webb?" Zixthara activated her personal display, showing a recent image of the transformed human. He looked more human now than he had immediately after his enhancement, but there was still something in his eyes that spoke of predatory awareness. "Doctor, Webb has become the head of the Human Adaptive Enhancement Program," she said. "He's working with volunteers from the human military to develop controlled enhancement protocols based on the research we conducted." She didn't mention that the volunteers were all Marines or that the enhancement protocols were being integrated into human military training. Some things the Council didn't need to know. "Are the humans a threat to galactic peace?" asked another. Representative Zixthara considered the question carefully. In the past 6 months, she had watched humanity spread across the galaxy like a wildfire, establishing colonies, making alliances, and building a presence that was already changing the balance of power between the major civilizations. But she had also watched them offer aid to species in need, share their technology freely with their allies, and approach every new contact with genuine curiosity and respect. "The humans," she said finally, "are exactly what they've always been: survivors, warriors, explorers. The question isn't whether they're a threat to galactic peace." She gestured toward the display, which now showed the current positions of human vessels throughout known space. "The question is whether the galaxy is ready for what humanity represents." A new voice spoke from the back of the chamber, clear and confident. "May I address the Council?" Zixthara turned to see Dr. Webb entering the chamber, flanked by Captain Chen and a small delegation of human diplomats. He looked perfectly human now, but she could still see the enhanced awareness in his eyes, the predatory grace in his movement. "Dr. Webb," she said, stepping aside from the podium. "Please." Webb walked to the center of the chamber, his presence somehow filling the vast space despite his relatively small size. "Honored representatives," he began, his voice carrying clearly, "to every corner of the amphitheater, I want to address the concerns that have been raised about humanity's intentions in the galaxy." He gestured toward the display showing human expansion. "It's true that humans are expanding rapidly. It's true that we're establishing colonies on worlds most species consider uninhabitable. It's true that our military capabilities are significant." A murmur ran through the chamber. "But I want you to understand something about humanity that seems to have been lost in translation," Webb continued. "We didn't come to the galaxy to conquer it. We came to explore it, to learn from it, to find our place in it." He paused, looking around at the assembled representatives. "The enhancements I've undergone, the military capabilities we possess, the adaptability that allows us to thrive on hostile worlds, these aren't weapons we've developed to threaten you. They're survival mechanisms we've developed to protect ourselves." Another representative spoke up. "Then why should we trust you?" Webb smiled, and for a moment he looked exactly like the curious, friendly doctor who had first boarded the endless inquiry. "Because," he said simply, For the first time in human history, we're not alone. For the first time, we have neighbors instead of enemies. For the first time, we have something worth protecting that isn't just our own survival. He gestured toward the assembled representatives. You asked if humans are a threat to galactic peace. Let me ask you something in return. What threatens galactic peace more? A species that's prepared for war, or a species that's unprepared for it? The chamber fell silent. We've learned, sometimes the hard way, that peace is something you have to fight for, Webb continued. Not because we want to fight, but because there are always those who would take peace away from those who can't defend it. He looked directly at Zixthera. 6 months ago, your people poisoned me to learn the secrets of human biology. Today I'm standing here offering to share those secrets freely because I believe the galaxy is stronger when we all understand each other. Another pause, then. The question isn't whether humanity is a threat. The question is whether we're going to be allies or strangers. Captain Chen stepped forward. The Earth Defense Force is prepared to offer mutual defense pacts to any species that wants them. We're prepared to share our technology, our knowledge, and our resources with anyone who approaches us in good faith. She looked around the chamber, with the calm confidence that Zixthara had come to associate with human leadership. But we're also prepared to defend ourselves and our allies against anyone who would threaten the peace we're all trying to build. The chamber erupted in discussion as representatives began debating among themselves. Zixthara watched Webb and Chen, noting the way they stood, relaxed but alert, confident but not arrogant, like predators who had found a territory worth defending. After an hour of debate, the council reached its decision. The vote was unanimous. Humanity would be welcomed as a full member of the galactic community, with all the rights and responsibilities that entailed. As the chamber emptied, Zixthara found herself standing beside Webb at the edge of the great windows that looked out over the galactic capital. Do you think it will work? She asked. This alliance between species? Webb was quiet for a moment, watching the ships of a dozen different civilizations moving through the space lanes below. Captain, he said finally, humans have been fighting wars for our entire history. We've learned that the only way to truly win a war is to make sure it never starts. He turned to look at her, and she saw something in his eyes that she had never seen before. Hope. For the first time in human history, he said, we're not fighting for survival. We're fighting for something better. Outside the windows, the stars shone with the promise of a galaxy that had just learned what it meant to have humanity as neighbors. And in the depths of space, on a small blue world orbiting an unremarkable yellow star, children played in gardens that had once been battlefields, dreaming of the day they too might walk among the stars. The age of human isolation was over. The age of galactic cooperation had begun. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, other species that had not yet made contact with the galactic community, detected the radio signals and faster-than-light communications that spoke of a new power rising among the stars. They began to prepare for first contact. They had no idea what they were about to encounter, but they would learn, as the hegemony had learned, that when you threaten a human, you don't just face one individual. You face the entire species that had turned a death world into a garden, and who would do anything, become anything, to protect the peace they had finally found among the stars. The galaxy would never be the same, and perhaps for the first time in cosmic history, that was exactly what it needed. The end.